Hi again. Today we're going to be talking about what causes anger and what makes a person angry.
It might not be what you think.
Right.
So stick around. We're going to go through the physical reactions the body has to anger. We're going to discuss how it affects us.
And how anger can be used for good.
True. So stick around.
Hi. As we think about anger, the first time I heard that anger was a secondary emotion, I didn't believe it because I felt like anger was my response sometimes.
It was right there.
Yeah, it was right there. There was no time for a first and second.
Right. So true.
But the truth is, anger is a secondary emotion. Sometimes we feel sad, we feel hurt, we feel left out, we feel threatened, we feel afraid. There is some other emotion that we feel first. And oftentimes that emotion makes us in some way feel insignificant or out of control in that situation. Or maybe so vulnerable we don't want to be in that state we perceive as weak. And so we get angry, and that anger makes us feel significant and in control.
Yeah.
And so to recognize, first of all, that what's causing your anger is something else. That's a great place to begin. What is it that's making you feel upset? And if you can figure that out, you're on your way to understanding how to help curb your anger.
And processing it.
Yeah.
So looking up like the root word of anger or that idea, I thought it was fascinating that anger meant to excite to wrath, and it was actually used, so it was used as like to anger someone almost a whole century before it became having a hostile attitude.
Oh, wow.
So what came first was the idea of angering someone, and then it became, now I'm angered, and it became personal and internal.
That's
where in the beginning it wasn't that way. So I thought that was interesting. And also, speaking about secondary emotion, the Middle English used anger alongside words of like grief and pain, trouble and affliction, vexation, sorrow, and wrath. So those were the synonyms of that time. And so they understood the secondary emotion, anger.
For sure.
So even from the beginnings, it's been something that's deeper than just that fieriness we have inside. In fact, as we were talking, that's what it is to me. There's a fire to anger. And sometimes that fire is important.
Right.
Sometimes that fire is needed. It is an emotion. Therefore, it's a human reaction, and we don't get rid of it, but we use it for good.
Right. And so if we think about those responses in the body, like what actually happens when you feel angry, how do you feel?
Yeah.
I want to know if you feel the same thing I feel. For me, I feel like my blood is boiling.
Yeah.
Like I literally feel like...
Yeah. Which is why we call it, we're getting heated.
Oh, yeah.
We literally are getting heated. It is this hotness in the body.
Yes.
And there's something, when you're feeling out of control or whatever, then there is some kind of a boost of energy it gives you to be able to move forward. And so it is something that can be to our benefit if we use it for good.
It's like a surge of energy, like my fist automatically clenches. Not that I've ever hit anyone, but
it's a
you feel that. There's a tension, there's an energy, there's... Maybe we don't need to describe anger. Maybe you've all felt it.
But think about like the breathing pattern. What would be a breathing pattern of the emotion anger? I mean, it's, you know what it is? It's almost no breathing.
Yeah. You're not thinking about breath.
Yeah, you're actually holding your breath,
yeah,
I think.
I think so too.
And so one of the things that's helpful is just to begin to take a deep breath, and that's one of the ways it moves and goes through you. But yeah, there is no breathing.
Yeah.
It's a holding of the breath.
Yeah.
And we talked about tensions in the body. Where do you feel those tensions? I definitely in the solar
In the
plexus.
gut.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Oh, the tense part in your stomach, the anger in the belly.
Well, and that's interesting too, because that's the area of the body, the solar plexus chakra. That is where your personal power
Yeah.
is. So if that is threatened and you need to bolster that and energize that, you're going to send your energy and support to that area to motivate you.
Yeah, what a great system it is to say, all right, that's what it's meant to do. We just have to become aware. It's something we haven't been aware of.
Yeah.
So in the heart, what does the heart beat? The actual physical heart begins to beat very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a lot of those fight or flight responses.
Yeah.
Your breathing becomes more shallow, your heartbeat more rapid. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For sure. And then the eye expression. Anger is the easy. You get that crease in the middle of your forehead with the angry eyes.
We're not going to demonstrate our angry face.
No, please. No, please. I've used that enough. But definitely this face contorts into not a beautiful way. Would you agree?
My children could look at that angry face of mine and that they would obey. They would start being obedient before I even said a word.
Yeah.
They could see it in my countenance.
and the blood was boiling inside. Yes. Yes, but like we said earlier, anger isn't always a negative thing. It is a motivator. It's presenting itself in order for us to take action somehow. Yeah. And in that moment, do we have a choice of which way we move toward the action for good or the action that is not good? And in fact, in history, usually change has come about from these initial people being angry at the status quo or what is acceptable and saying this is no longer acceptable. So it begins with a few brave people who use maybe some of that anger to push society forward. But it's not always the best trail to stay on as we make change.
Yeah.
And I know you learned and studied a lot about those kind of in a few different history experiences with anger.
And I think for me, as I look back in history, when anger created change that was positive, that anger came from things that were core truths and values for all human beings. Mm-hmm. There should not be slavery. There should not be rape. There should not be
taking over of somebody else's possessions and
yes, there should not be injustices. And so when we respond in our anger to those things that are truth, that's when your anger can motivate you to create positive change. But your action at that point is really critical. If you look at Gandhi, for example, he was responding to something that was true. Human rights were being violated, and he needed to stand for that. But he did not stand in his anger. He let his life be his mission, and he stood in peace. And that peace rippled out and affected people so deeply that it shifted a society. So even though we might be angry and we might be correct in our anger, that next step is so important, because when we act out in our anger and do things that we regret, that's when anger can be our enemy.
And I would guess Gandhi probably had feelings and emotions of anger.
Right.
But he took that moment, and in order to plant a seed, he knew, if I plant a seed of anger, I don't want anger to grow.
Right.
So he took time in that moment to go into peace and love. And that's where it takes a minute and it takes some discipline. But if we can stop and really pay attention to what we want, then we don't stick to anger, because we will get angry back. That when somebody's angry, the natural defenses of the other person in the body is to defend.
Right, for sure.
And so we defend even if we're defending wrong. Because our physiology is built that way.
Right.
To defend against anger.
Right. And I love Mother Teresa. She was such a proponent of peace and nurturing and taking care of people. But she said, if you have an anti-war rally, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
But if you have a peace rally, invite me.
Yeah.
So even though she spent her life defending the injustices and the impoverished and those people who were looked down upon and cast out, she spent her life correcting that wrong and nurturing people into that right. She would still only stand for that in a peaceful way. And I think that's an incredible example.
So great. Anger is a natural emotion. So the important part is to let the emotion come and let it flow in and present itself, but it's also, so we need to release it. And I know you have found in Reiki that you can feel anger.
Right. If someone's holding on to Reiki and I'm working with them, I can feel that anger, and it's like a cement wall. There's no going through anger, and people sometimes want to hold on to their anger and they want to heal at the same time, and you can't. Anger will not allow that. You really have to let go of the anger in order for the healing to come in and take place. The anger is a contradiction to your healing. Anger is full of hate and resentment and judgment and force, where healing, it always comes through love and compassion and peace. And so know that we can't have both, and we don't need both. Anger is not going to serve us to hold on to it. It's just like holding on to poison.
So it's important to look and use that anger to get to that first emotion, because it's the secondary emotion. Use that anger to process and find that first emotion, because that's what's needing the healing.
The attention, And as you, if you want to hit the button and subscribe, tomorrow we're going to talk about how to take that anger and shift it so that you can use that energy and emotion, but move it into a positive state.